Hello everyone, Rob Guest from football.london here, and welcome to the latest episode of Gold Guest Talk Tottenham, sponsored by NordVPN. Joining me today, it's Alasdair Gold. You well?
I am good, thank you. I hope you are too. You've been away. It's good to have you back. Some people were quite concerned about you, to be honest. They did not disappoint in the comments. There was quite a few people suggesting that maybe you'd lost the books that helped you climb up to get the doorknob open to open the door, and you've got yourself stuck in a room somewhere in the house. But you seem to be okay.
Yes, yeah, managed to get out the door. Yeah, it's fine.
Very nice too. Back to Tottenham Hotspur and everything that they bring us. Even in a week where it feels like nothing's happened, so much has happened. It's so weird.
Yeah, plenty to talk about. First up, we're going to discuss Cristian Romero and his Tottenham future. As everyone's well aware, he's been linked with move to Atletico Madrid this summer. There was some reports from Argentina claiming that Spurs and Atleti had agreed on the fee for the 27-year-old, but we believe those are not true. We at Football London understand that new head coach Thomas Frank actually wants to keep Romero at the club this summer. So I know you were reporting on that this morning. Surely all Tottenham fans want to keep him at the club, just given how important he is at the back.
Yeah, I think, well, he is. It's like, it is kind of stating the obvious, really, in a way, to say that Thomas Frank would want to keep him, because why wouldn't you? You know, he is one of the best in the world. He's a World Cup winner. He is a two-time Copa America winner. He has just won the Europa League as player of the tournament, man of the match in the final. And yeah, Lionel Messi says you're the best defender in the world. You're probably up there. You know, you're probably worthy of certainly being in the conversation. So yeah, of course he hasn't been entirely consistent for Spurs over the years. Yes, he's had injury issues. I mean, he only started 18 Premier League games last season. A lot of that, I think, towards the end would have been prioritising the Europa League. But there's no getting away from the fact that when he plays, Spurs are just a better level. They just are. And all the players around him respond to him playing. I mean, Postecoglou, before he headed off into the sunset, one of the last things he said in his press conferences was, it's so important for Spurs to keep Cristian Romero and also tie him down to the long-term future, because I think the expression he used was all of the players around him walk that little bit taller when he's beside them, which I thought was a cracking phrase. And that is the kind of player he is. He's that good. I mean, is he 27? He's not even probably at his prime yet as a centre-back. It's probably in the next year or two. Yeah, I just... It's one of those where we saw some of the figures involved as well. It was being claimed as being accepted, which, like you said, that, you know, we know isn't the case at this moment in time. For a player like that with 2 years left, I'm sorry, there's no way on earth Spurs should be accepting anything near 50, 60 million.
Yeah, well, I mean, he cost, what, about 50 million?
Yeah, was it
40, 50 million?
Between 40 and 50. God, it feels like a lifetime ago,
And
doesn't
that
it?
was 4 years ago. And in that time, he's won the Copa America, the World Cup. He's become, you know, he's been a leader for Tottenham, won the armband, delivered some huge performances. His price tag's gone up since then.
Yeah.
It's
not the final
stayed
year.
around. Yeah, it's not stayed around the same mark. And yeah, he's still got time on his contract. But Spurs surely just wouldn't accept a bid like that. It just doesn't make sense.
No, exactly. That's it. It makes no sense whatsoever. It's just, I know there's an aspect of, you know, let's say the player wanted to go, and we know the way Romero is in interviews. If he wants to go, we'll find out pretty quickly, because he will have an interview with people back home in Argentina. What I would say is, actually, he's being quite respectful to Spurs as a club and the fans. I've always felt, in the way he talks about the club, he often calls it this beautiful club and stuff like this. I would say maybe hasn't kind of had the same opinion about decisions made at the club. We've seen that. He's made his views on those quite public. However, I've always kind of felt that the club itself, even there was that recent interview where he spoke about La Liga and wanting to play there. I even felt the tone of how he said that was actually still... I don't know if saying it at the training ground of the club you're currently at was the greatest thing in the world, but I did feel like the tone of the interview itself was very much about, you know, I'm here, I'm playing my football in the future. That's a league that I want to kind of almost complete the set, isn't it, of playing in Italy, Premier League and Spain. But yeah, I just think Spurs would be nonsensical to accept any bid below. I don't even want to put a figure on it, but just what is currently has been spoken about, 50, 60 million. That's absurd. Even 70 million, I would say, would be absurd if you're talking about a player that is still seen as one of the best, and clearly Diego Simeone is desperate for. That should count against them, showing their desperation for wanting to sign him. That should not be a kind of, that will lower the fee. But yeah, I think the key thing for me is that Thomas Frank really wants to keep him. He wants him to be kind of the linchpin of this new look Tottenham Hotspur going forward, another new look for Tottenham Hotspur, and he can absolutely be that. And with 2 years left, it's kind of a bit, I suppose, where Harry Kane was back then, that Spurs have still got the power. So it doesn't really matter too much if the player is absolutely desperate and anxious to leave or anything. And I'm not saying he is. It may be that Romero feels like he wants a shot at the Champions League with Spurs. It may be that he feels he's got enough time left in his career to head off to the Liga at a later date. So yeah, I'm not saying that. Like I said, we kind of have to hear from him first before we can kind of put words into his mouth. But we certainly know that the club and Thomas Frank want to keep him. Whether he signs a new deal will probably be taken into account more in 12 months' time than now, you would think. But yeah, I just think you would be crazy to lose him, because, as Postecoglou said, I looked back at those quotes earlier, who do you replace him with? Who replaces Cristian Romero and is of a similar level? You bring in someone that's okay. I mean, to be honest, in the current setup, it probably would be Kevin Danso would step in. But I'd be stunned if Spurs, if they decided to sell Cristian Romero, didn't go and bring someone in. You would have to go and do that, wouldn't you?
Oh, 100%. I've just got a feeling this is just going to rumble on, probably towards the end of the transfer window. And like you say, it's going to depend on if Romero wants to go and he says something and he makes it clear, and how much Atleti actually want him. I suppose, I mean, they paid out big money, didn't they, last year for Julian Alvarez from City?
Yeah.
So they've quite clearly got the money.
They spent a bit in the last week or two, haven't they? I think as well.
I'm not sure. But if you're talking about 50, 60 million for Spurs, yeah, that's all right. Probably if you're getting another player as part of the deal, not just 50, 60 million straight for Romero. But no, I think there's probably still a bit more to come in this transfer saga. But from a Tottenham perspective, if you are to sell him, you don't want to be doing it the final few weeks of the window, when Modric went, Gareth Bale, like that. You don't want to be in that scenario, especially when it's Thomas Frank's first, pre-season at the club, which is a really, really important time for him.
Yeah, well, that's the key as well. It's like, you kind of felt like a couple of years back when Postecoglou came in, it was all about Harry Kane. It was all about, is he going to have him? Is he not going to have him, kind of thing. And it feels like, again, it's another new start for Spurs. And there's, Romero and Son. We don't know what's going to happen with them. That's your captain and vice captain. It's such a bad look for a club to be kind of that in a state of potential flux. And I just think you kind of, with Sonny, you can quite rightly say, I think, look, 10 years in, you choose. It's up to you. We'll kind of, if you want to stay and you want to, see out the rest of your contract, that you've absolutely earned the right to do that. If you want to leave, we'll try and make that happen, kind of thing. I think he's at that stage where he kind of has to have his power there. Whereas I think you could probably just put your foot down with Romero and just say, look, if you do want to go, you're going to have to wait. It's not this summer. We're not losing a captain and vice captain and having to do a massive rebuild this whole summer again. So, yeah, we'll see. Like you say, we could be talking about this in a month's time. It could still be rumbling on. What I would say is, he should be back. He was involved in international, so maybe end of this week towards the start of next, potentially. I think they'll all be back. I think they start to come back around this Saturday, maybe the day before, some of them might. And then I think the international players will be kind of over the weekend and into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday the next week. So that's going to be fascinating, because this is the other part of it. Thomas Frank, everyone would go on about how good a talker Postecoglou was, and he could, encourage players to come to the club, have these chats that we always heard about. Thomas Frank is no, like, dreadful person with words. He is a very kind of Interesting guy that engages with people, a great communicator. So I would be shocked if Romero has a chat with him and doesn't like him. They've got to build a relationship there. But I would be stunned if he doesn't come out of it thinking, well, he's a good guy, kind of thing. I know where I stand and what I can do for him. So that's going to be crucial, I think. I don't think we'll probably get to speak to Romero on tour unless something changes between now and then. I think if there's any potential, still a maybe about it, I can't see that we get to talk to him. It was the same with Harry Kane 2 years ago. He was like this kind of awkward side character on the tour. I remember being at an event in, I think it was Singapore, and he was there kind of meeting some of the local kids in the community. And there was a moment where he and I were like about 6 foot from each other, and he just went, "All right." And I went, "All right." And he kind of sidled off away in the room. Hopefully it wasn't just because it was me. I think it was more the fact there was a reporter and of one person he did not want to be anywhere near and potentially get caught in a conversation with that summer was a journalist. Whereas obviously in the past he'd always been very, very pleasant. Not to say he was horrendous or anything, but I think that will be the same case with Romero, because we did get him. It might have been that tour actually 2 years ago. Do you remember the one where he spoke about Conte and the split in the camp?
Yeah.
I think we got him through a translator, which was quite a rarity. But yes, I'd be surprised if we do again, unless he comes out publicly and says something beforehand.
Yeah. In terms of players coming in through the door, it looks like Spurs are going to wrap up the signing of Kota Takai from Kawasaki Frontale very soon. The Japanese club released a statement today. I'll read it. "We would like to inform you that Kota Takai will be leaving the team at the end of the activity on Saturday, July 5th, in order to complete the necessary procedures and preparations for a transfer to an overseas club. We will notify you further regarding future plans as soon as they are officially decided." After the match against Kashima Antlers in the 23rd round of the J1 League on Saturday, July 5th, Kota Takai will be giving a speech to the supporters. In addition, Takai will not be participating in the Fan Appreciation Day on Sunday, July the 6th. So that reads like he will be becoming a Tottenham player very soon, right at the start of pre-season under Thomas Frank.
Yeah, I love the way that kind of Japanese clubs kind of clearly go about it in a bit of a different way. It's very kind of informative without revealing where he's going or that a deal has actually been done, but it's almost like, yeah, in advance we're going to let you know this probably is going to happen, which is like just not something we get in the Premier League. I thought it was very it's like a very polite announcement, just in case kind of you might want to get there to say goodbye to him, kind of thing. I think another translation of it said something about him potentially doing a speech, and stuff like that. So yeah, it's it looks like that one's heading there. And look, we must stress, I know we're talking about this just after Romero. This is not the direct Romero replacement. Hopefully down the line would be wonderful if he is, but we're not saying that he's coming in here to replace, Lionel Messi's best friend kind of thing. And we actually had a scout out, didn't we? Watching him at one point. And I certainly know someone that's seen him in the flesh playing.
Yeah, I actually watched him in Tokyo last year when I was out there. Went to watch Kawasaki Frontale against FC Tokyo. They won 3-0 and Takai started.
Didn't get an interview afterwards.
No, I can't really remember much about the match or Takai, but we'll go with he was world class on the day. Well, looks to be a proper defender. But no, having read everything about him, sounds like definitely one for the future. A young lad with a lot of potential, more to come. Made a big name for himself in Japan, and now it's just about making that big next step in the Premier League. I mean, look, Ange at Celtic, bringing players like Kyogo, Reo Hatate over Daizen Maeda, and they flourished in Scotland. Now, Takai will be looking to do the same in the Premier League with Spurs. And you were speaking with a journalist who's been watching him closely. Do you fill everyone in on what he said?
Oh, honestly, it was. We often do this when there's a player that we're not too aware of, we know of, but don't know enough to kind of present a really, really, really strong opinion on. We kind of like to go to speak to journalists and experts from that field in those countries. And this was right up there with one of the most insightful kind of interviews I've done with anyone that's watched a player like regularly. It's Tezuku Akawa. He's a freelance football editor. He used to be the Gold.com Japan chief editor and also DAZN News Japan chief editor. And you know, when you just kind of have a back and forth with someone, and you're like, yeah, pick the right person here. You just know them inside out. And he was really, really interesting. I'll kind of read some of these bits out to you. I asked him, what is Takai like as a player and what are his strengths and weaknesses? To which he said, his strengths are that he's tall and dominant in the air. He notably matched up well against Cristiano Ronaldo in the recent AFC Champions League match, and he held his own. However, most of the reputation in the air largely comes from his play in the J League, where the players are generally smaller, so we'll need to see how he can adapt in the Premier League. He's got good pace, strong defensive awareness. He's technically solid on the ball. He's capable of carrying the ball forward and delivering line-breaking passes. He's grown to the Kawasaki youth team, as did Mitoma, so it's famous for technique, apparently, that academy. He said his weaknesses are he's still young, needs more experience to refine his defensive moves. When it comes to language, his English is limited, so how quickly he can grasp tactical instructions is uncertain. Personality-wise, he's calm and perhaps a bit unconventional. He might need time to adjust to a very different environment, and he's not very talkative, doesn't speak to the media much, and has a laid-back demeanour, which might make integrating into a new team a bit of a challenge, although with a young Spurs squad with people like Archie Gray and Lucas Bergvall, that might make it a bit smoother. Along the other kind of insights he gave me, he said he's very comfortable playing on the left of a centre-back pairing. He's played in a back three as well. He's played as a fullback for Japan's under-20s. And he kept talking about his speed. And he was saying a little bit like Tomiyasu. He kind of feels like that might be where Spurs might originally or start him off playing as a fullback to try and kind of get him used to stuff. What else did he say? He said most Japanese players kind of make that stepping stone league move. So kind of they might head to the Eredivisie or the Belgian league or the Bundesliga or even Scotland, things like that. Whereas he said this is quite a rare instance where a player's gone straight from Japan to the Premier League. And he said that's going to be maybe his biggest hurdle, is trying to go straight into the kind of physicality and pace of the Premier League as well. And he said he's a calm, almost nonchalant personality. He doesn't get overly tense or emotional, which might actually help him on the mental side of things. And he gives off the impression of someone who won't be overwhelmed by the big stage and should be able to handle it with composure. So, yeah, there's loads of other stuff. Have a look on football.london. It was quite a long back and forth with more bits and pieces in it. But, yeah, I just thought there was some really interesting stuff, like especially like the mental side of things that we wouldn't possibly know unless you had the foresight to go and get that interview a year ago. But you'll know better for next time to read the minds of the Tottenham hierarchy.
Right, that's the halfway point of today's podcast. Ali's gone to fill everyone in now on the benefits of using our sponsor, Saley.
Yeah, I was thinking I could switch it over to you this week because you'd been abroad, but it doesn't actually apply to you, does it, on this occasion?
No, we'll try again in September or whenever next time we go abroad.
I know. I should stress it's not because Guesty refused to use it. He just didn't go far enough afield to warrant using it. He could just use his normal data. But if you were going further afield, then certainly NordVPN's Saley product is superb. It's something I've used all across the globe. I've used it in, let me think, I've used it in America. I've used it in Asia. I will be using it again in Hong Kong and South Korea this summer on the tour. And then we've got Germany for the Bayern Munich match as well, Italy for the Super Cup. So I shall certainly be using Saley there. It's an eSIM essentially that just gives you a much better, cheaper way of using your internet abroad than you're likely to get from your the data roaming charges that your mobile network will charge you. So yeah, it's a really, really good product, and like we always say, wouldn't promote it if I didn't use it and find it to be excellent. Yeah, I think my wife used it as well on one of the holidays. It's really, really, really good product. Worked perfectly for us. Obviously, check it works on whatever device you're using it on, but we've had no issues whatsoever when we've used it. And because you're doing it through the podcast, of course, we're going to get you a bit of a special deal. You can either download Saily, which is SAILY, in your app store, and use our code Gold Guest at the checkout to get an exclusive 15% off your first purchase. Or you can just go straight online to saily.com/Gold Guest and you'll get the same discount there. And for more information, please do go to our episode description box.
So tomorrow, Max, big day in the calendar, July the 1st. It's when a number of players will become free agents. In terms of Tottenham, the likes of Fraser Forster, Sergio Reguilon, Alfie Whiteman, their last day's Tottenham players is today. Free agents from tomorrow can sign whoever they want. In terms of notable free agents then, one player I know you asked me about yesterday, Dominic Calvert-Lewin. In terms of free transfer.
We should stress that I wasn't going like off any hot information I'd had. I was very much saying, do you reckon Spurs might go for him?
I think he'll move abroad, to be honest. I've just got this feeling he'll go abroad. He released a statement yesterday explaining his decision, and it was basically said together with his family they've made this decision to leave Everton. I think that hints maybe at a move elsewhere, abroad. Again, why would you leave a top club like Everton?
I know you're doing some stalking of him. Did you say his wife's not? She's from abroad, isn't she?
Yeah, I think she's part Swiss and Ethiopian.
Okay.
Yeah.
So she couldn't be registered as a contract player. Yeah. You'd have to have her on the foreign player list.
Non-homegrown, yeah.
Non-homegrown, okay. It's one of those where I think if Spurs needed, how do I put this? What's the best way to put it? I think maybe if Richarlison were to head off, I could kind of understand it very loosely as maybe a backup kind of player. Although I'm sure you'll tell us that he's kind of worthy of being more than a backup player. But I think also if I'm Spurs, probably not going to go towards a potential another injury-prone Everton striker after what's happened with Richarlison. And look, at least with Richarlison, he wasn't really injury-prone until we took him. Whereas with Dominic Calvert-Lewin, that's definitely been the case for him at yours.
Might work the other way though. This time, you sign him.
What, you think they'll fix him?
Yeah, maybe. He's had a really bad run of injuries. I think the past 2 seasons it's been a lot better. I think he missed probably about 10 games last season. Just got a really bad hamstring injury at Brighton. I think that was about January, February time. But prior to that, he was playing in every game. And then the season before, again, just a couple of small periods when he was out. It was like the year or 2 before that when he was literally stop-start. And I think Sean Dyche just said with him, right, we're taking our time with you. This time we're not rushing you back and you'll play when you're good and ready. And that seemed to work until he then got another injury like a few weeks later. But his record in goal, in front of goal, hasn't been great over the past few seasons. I think he only scored 3 times last year. But, I mean, you could see in January against Tottenham just what he can do on his day. He scored a brilliant goal, got an assist as well, really good in the air, dominant, can hold up a ball. It's a good free transfer for any club, but I think everyone's just going to be wary of these injury issues that plagued him in recent seasons, unfortunately.
Yeah, he's always given Spurs problems. Dominant Calvert-Lewin, he has. And Arsenal. I feel like Arsenal, he used to always give problems as well. There was that little period, wasn't there, where he was kind of the belle of the ball that everyone kind of wanted, and there was always, I think it was Arsenal especially, were always linked with a move each summer.
It was under Ancelotti when he came in. I think he scored 16 in 33 Premier League games that season. Basically, he told him, just stay between the width of the goalpost. And that's where all your goals will come. Just don't bother moving anywhere else. And it worked brilliantly for him. But since then, now the goals just haven't flowed. But he was in the England team at that point. He was in the squad for the Euros in 2021. Like I said, it's just the injuries which really killed him in recent seasons.
Are you going to get a shirt on the wall behind you?
No.
No. Didn't take that place in your heart like the others did behind you.
No, he's a good player, but no, not one of very favourite players. Put it that way.
Okay. Yeah, I used to like him, but I'd be surprised if Spurs were to go through him. I was only kind of inquiring half in jest, just to see kind of your thoughts on him. But what other free agents are there out there this summer? It feels like it is, other than, we've mentioned before, Kyle Walker-Peters as a potential club-trained player. Feels like there's a little bit slim pickings in terms of, every year there's always this, here's a starting 11 of great free transfers you can get. But
Yeah, I don't think there's that many top ones this year. I think the most high profile one is Jonathan David at Lille, who's done incredibly well. He's been linked with a move to the Premier League for what seems like forever, and it's just never happened for him, despite scoring like 25 plus goals in League One every season. Who else is there?
I should stress on Jonathan David. He is someone that Spurs have looked at in the past, but from what we understand, that doesn't seem to be the case this summer.
Yeah, DCL, Kyle Walker-Peters, Nelson Semedo at Wolves. But the thing is, with him, he's like 3 or 4 years older than Kyle Walker-Peters, foreign player as well. Just doesn't make sense. If you're looking for a backup right back, Kyle Walker-Peters is your man, because he's club trained after all. But we don't want to go into that again.
No, we really don't. We don't. I mean, we should also stress, I know there was some people going, why are you talking about free transfers? Spend the money, Tottenham. It just purely has popped into our heads right now because we were talking about Calvert-Lewin. We're not saying that that's the market Spurs need to operate in or anything like that. To be honest, it looks like they're trying to make things happen. It's just kind of, there's a few kind of potential links, aren't there, right now out there, and I think they've kind of got a string of people they've been interested in for a while. And it's maybe a case now of kind of Thomas Frank identifying exactly which ones fit his system the best, I suppose, and also getting into training and looking at some of the players he's got and deciding, like, I've got a squad of about 75 players. Do I have to can I revitalize any of these that maybe you thought were leaving, or that are any that you definitely think are staying, but actually I don't fancy them in my system? There's also the other element, isn't there, of some clubs probably waiting for the PSR deadline, so anything goes on to next season as well. And this isn't to excuse Tottenham. I would have liked to have a deal by now. We had Maddison and Vicario by this point 2 years ago when they had a new manager. So it's not to excuse it, but there are definitely, for some clubs, there will be reasons why they haven't done much at this moment.
Yeah, well, I think for Tottenham, the main thing that we're looking for at the start of June was a brand new manager. So that's taking away a lot of the focus off the transfers, because that's the number one thing you've got to solve first of all. And Thomas Frank's not even had the opportunity to meet his Tottenham players first. So once he's seen them, then he can start making some decisions over the players. And there, as ever, from July 1st, things will start picking up in the transfer market. Well, I can remember 3 years ago, Jed Spence, there was so much talk about him joining from Middlesbrough, and was it right before the pre-season tour when he eventually signed on?
No, I know why. It was after. It was just as it was finishing, because I was the muppet that asked Conte about him, and he said, "Yeah, he's a player the club wanted to sign," and I was just like, "Oh my word!" But we couldn't actually use it. We had to kind of wait until he was announced, because he was technically talking about a player that hadn't signed yet. So I remember it was just after the tour came to a close. But yeah, all of our faces, it was kind of half like, what have you just said? Because this is going to taint this player for the rest of his time at Spurs, but also your journalist brain going, cha-ching! That strange kind of balance we have to ride. But hey, Jed's come good. It's been great for him. I think it hopefully should be a player for the long term now at Spurs.
Yeah. I think the most important thing is you get the players in time for the pre-season tour, because that's massive. That's the time where they can get to know each other, bond as players. And Spurs are actually going on tour what seems to be a bit later this summer than previous years.
As well, shorter one.
Yeah, but July 1st from tomorrow, Tuesday. So fingers crossed those deals will start picking up. But a few players linked, one being Mohamed Kudus at West Ham.
Yeah, he's an interesting one. I Yesterday, I was kind of asking around about him because I'd heard some little bits and pieces about him, and there wasn't too much around yesterday. Whereas today, it feels like it's completely changed. Like literally, everyone I've spoken to has been like, "Oh yeah, there's definitely interest there. Yeah, Spurs have got interest there." Um, I think he's one of a number of players they're looking at across those positions. It feels like the priority feels like in the attacking slots. The attacking midfield, kind of potentially on the wing slots. What do you make of him? I don't know if I'm entirely sold on him. He's one of these players for me that looks. Sometimes you look at him and you think, "What a world beater," and then sometimes I just feel like he can be a bit anonymous as well.
Yeah, well, he was actually supposed to go to Everton from Ajax before he went to West Ham, but that move didn't happen. I
It
thought
was
he
like
looked.
Arnaut Danjuma, was it? He didn't turn up for the match.
Having watched him in the Champions League for Ajax, I saw a few games. He looks really good, and I think he's done well at West Ham. To be fair, David Moyes got a lot out of him. Graham Potter as well. I think the good thing about him is his versatility. He can play anywhere across right wing, left wing, attacking midfield as a striker as well. I think that'd help Spurs out massively. Just having that versatility, I think is maybe unpredictable at times, a bit raw. He's got the speed, skill. I think there's a good player in there. Thomas Frank maybe could take him up to another level, but I think if I was a West Ham fan, I'd be questioning why getting rid of, one of the best players. Probably early Jared Bowen, more important than him in the West Ham team.
Are his numbers high enough, or is it just purely in terms of he's playing for a team that has maybe struggled a little bit?
I don't know. I've not really looked at the numbers, but
they're not great, especially last year.
What did he get last year?
Oh, I think it was something like it was only about 5 goals or something like that. I can have a look as you tell me more of your thoughts on him.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's been talk of Eze 65 million, but maybe he's heading off across North London now to Arsenal. That's what the latest rumours maybe suggest. Brian Mbuemo, similar money. Is it Kudus release clause about 85 million?
Yeah, I think isn't it for the first couple of weeks of July or something? I don't think people will pay that. The other aspect as well is that Spurs and West Ham don't deal with each other. It's just not a done thing. So that would be a big leap in itself. His numbers just for you in the Premier League last season: 5 goals, 3 assists. Overall, the whole season, 35 games, 5 goals, 4 assists.
I mean, they were poor, weren't they, last season?
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. It's like whether it's reflective of the team. Sometimes in a struggling team, you have like a standout player, don't you? I'm now checking Jared Bowen. I've always liked Jared Bowen.
Well, Kudus actually got sent off, didn't he, against Tottenham last season at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium? Was it Van der Ven fouled, kicked out him, then Sarr went and pushed him into Richarlison's face. Yeah. Then he's
Jared Bowen in a struggling team, 14 goals and 10 assists.
Yeah, and then Kudus, previous season, I think it was 14 or 15 goals, 14 for West Ham, 9 assists in there. That's across all competitions, so quite
still
clearly.
24, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd certainly be going nowhere near 18 million for him. That's ridiculous sort of money. But if you can get a good deal, I mean, Scott Parker was the last player to go from West Ham to Tottenham. 2011.
Yeah, and there was talk, wasn't there, that Spurs stopped. I think it was Adebayor going to West Ham at one point. There's a history there. I don't think they've. I mean, I guess it's how much West Ham, if they need the money, I suppose, whether they just kind of forego their things they don't want to do just for the sake of financing what comes next season, I suppose. But yeah, he's an interesting one. I mean, I quite like Jacob Ramsey. I know, certainly Kudus is more probably versatile in the positions he can play in. But I don't know. For me, if I'm picking between the two, and please let me know how outraged you are about those in the comments, kind of thing. But I kind of feel like I just see a little bit more about Ramsey in terms of maybe a slightly better consistency as well. And his numbers weren't spectacular last season. I got him here: 4 goals and 7 assists as well. Slightly younger, about a year and a bit younger than Kudus. I think Kudus turns 25 in August, I think. But yeah, it's look, in a dream world, Eze for me is the one. I just think he's such a terrific player, and I think he would transform the whole outlook of that Spurs team. Whereas I feel like with players like Kudus and Ramsey, they're ones that, like you said earlier, exactly that. Thomas Frank would need to work with them, would need to kind of make them a better, more consistent player. Whereas I think someone like Eze comes in, he just lights up the kind of the team. But I guess it's maybe easier said than done if we're to find out, I suppose, where he wants to go, what's happening with him. I mean, some people have suggested that Spurs don't need Eze. Do you agree with that?
I mean, where would you play him? Left wing?
Probably left wing or on the left of the midfield. I suppose if it's 4-2-3-1, he's going to be on the left, isn't he, of the three?
Yeah, plays centrally a lot as well for Palace. But
Yeah.
then you've got Maddison, Kulusevski there as well. You've got a lot of options. But then again, the squad needs beefing up for the Champions
100%.
League, and it needs a lot more quality added to it because last season proved that point. I think if he's available, I mean, is his release cost like 65 million?
It is, but there's various kind of complications apparently in it, and there's talk that Palace have kind of lowered their demands when it comes to that and how it's paid. But certainly, I think it would be a hefty whack of money. Would probably, even if it's installments, it would have to be quite big installments. But yeah,
I can't understand why no clubs just come in and activated that. Because
I think that's probably why, isn't it? Because it isn't quite that straightforward.
But I suppose as well, in terms of like Kudus' release clause, if it's like 80, 85 million, he's not worth that. But Eze surely is worth 60 odd million plus straight away.
Yeah. Well, it may be that someone, I think City have been linked with him in the past as well, haven't they, Eze? So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see what's on. I just kind of had this feeling like Johan Langer's going to come out with one of his specials. It'll be someone that maybe we didn't expect out of the blue. We think back now when Spurs were linked with Desiree Doué and what he's doing at PSG and how incredible he is. If you could find someone like that again, my word.
He'll be a Adama Traore, like 3 or 4 years on.
Thanks for that blast from the past. Oh my goodness, that was about 3 windows in a row, wasn't it? Because Paratici loved him.
Dan James as well was the other one.
Dan James, yeah, we were never treated to the baby oil. I wonder who would have held the baby oil for him at Tottenham. Adama Traore. That was always his thing, wasn't it? There's plenty of interesting kind of ones out there. I mean, obviously, like you said, tomorrow people might listen to this on Tuesday, so I might be saying today, but you've got Tel, Danso, and Vuskovic all officially become Tottenham players, don't they? Pierre-Emile Højbjerg officially leaves the club. I think, isn't it? I think I worked it out. It's about £63 million essentially gets committed tomorrow to kind of bringing players in. I think Højbjerg was about 17, I think it was in total, coming the other way. So, yeah, it's there's money being spent, but it's just not on new players at this point, is it? It's players that have already kind of been associated with the club on loan. And, I can see them probably going for those attacking slots first, like an attacking midfielder type who can play out on the wing. I think they still need to kind of make a decision on the number 6 position. I think that needs to be a key one for them in getting someone in. And then probably the rest of the team, there's a lot of, like we've said, Thomas Frank looking at what he's got and what he needs, but also reacting to potential departures and what that means and what opportunities that brings. Alejo Valise, we would imagine, heads off. There was some talk in Argentina that a deal had been done for him, which seemed to be very, very, very premature from everything that I'd heard. I don't even think a serious offer had been made at that point. Brian Hill be heading off. I wonder how much money they get for him, because he had a decent season at Girona until the injury. But with a year left and just having had knee surgery, does that affect his price tag? Do they have to do a bit like a Højbjerg thing, that essentially the fee becomes a bit of a loan fee wrapped into something else? And, Richarlison, what happens with Richarlison? Your friend whose name appears behind you, if you could keep him fit, I think he's a no-brainer to be part of the squad for next season. But if you're judging him on his availability over the last 3 years, you'd also be quite tempted to get your money back, or at least a fair whack of money, and bring in someone that maybe is going to be a bit more reliable in that sense. What do you think will happen with him?
I don't know, to be
Apart
honest.
from you wanting him back at Everton.
It's a huge year for Richarlison because it's the World Cup. Just got back in the Brazil squad recently. I think he was saying he wasn't very happy with his performances in the couple of games. So, yeah, he's just got to concentrate on keeping himself fit and just getting those regular minutes under the belt. I think what's going to help him is Ancelotti's Brazil's manager now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ancelotti loves him, having worked with him at Everton. In terms of Richie, where's he got? If you'd probably asked the question 3 or 4 months ago, you'd said, yeah, he goes. But just look what he did in the Europa League final and in the run to the final as well. Proved how important he can be if he's starting on the left, if he's starting through the middle. I don't know. I really don't know what will happen with him, to be honest.
Well, that's the thing. Thomas Frank might come in and absolutely love him. He might just really click with him in training. He's going to be on a desperate mission to kind of impress because, like you say, he wants to be playing regularly ahead of the World Cup. There are going to be a hell of a lot of games to go around next season with the Champions League matches as well, and the rotation that's going to be needed for that, and the Premier League every 3 to 4 days. So if he can stay fit, he and Solanke are going to be sharing a load of that, and you would imagine they'll look to bring in someone that can also play up front as well. Because his system, it can be a front two at times as well. So they could both be playing alongside each other. Richarlison's a big one for me. I think he kind of dictates, a lot of what happens in those attacking areas because he's got 2 years left. But if you get a good bid for him and he thinks, okay, that's where I can play week in, week out and make sure I'm in the World Cup, then maybe that happens. And then it has a knock-on effect on who they bring in. But if he stays, it does kind of limit you slightly in terms of who else you bring in because they want to go there. But, homegrown numbers, club-trained players, all of that malarkey. 31 players, is it, to fit into 22 spots right now? So, and Takai coming in is going to be a potential another one of those in the European squad. So there's going to have to be a fair few departures. And I think that's also going to dictate some of what they do. But the problem is they want to build a squad. They need to let people go, but the only way that they can kind of fix the squad issue is by having club-trained players, which you can't replicate without going out and signing Kyle Walker or Kyle Walker-Peters or bringing Harry Kane back or, any of the other players, Dennis Sirkin, Harry Winks, Oliver Skipp, players like that. You can't really fix it with that. The only other way to do it is a long-term view, which is signing up all of these kind of young players, bringing them through the door, and in 2 to 3 years' time, then they will start to become club trained. And it's so boring. Even as I'm saying it, I'm boring myself, but unfortunately, it is something that people keep forgetting when they talk about kind of trying to make this Harlem Globetrotters-esque squad of all these amazing players. There's just no room. I mean, they're signing Oliver Boast, the 16-year-old from Leeds United. He's coming in through the doors, and that's, I think, is part of this long-term plan to try and stock up on a team of kids that will grow together, essentially. But we're kind of about the now right now. That's the problem. We want a bigger, better squad for Spurs to compete in the Premier League and Champions League, so that Thomas Frank doesn't come a cropper straight off the bat, as it were.
I think in terms of that Champions League squad, the dream scenario is you can name all 25 in there, fill up every space. But let's be honest, Tottenham won the Europa League last season with the 23-man squad, plus your B list. So at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter too much. But I think, fingers crossed, in a couple of years' time, it will sort itself out. And one of those players who will become club trained, Mikey Moore, who looks set to be on the verge of signing a new contract, as you reported.
Yeah, well, they're getting there. The Spurs have offered a new contract to him, and now we're in that negotiation stage of trying to work out exactly what that final deal will look like. But certainly, there are a lot of clubs waiting to see what happens in different degrees. Some waiting to see whether Spurs will allow him to go out on loan to get some experience, which I feel would probably be more beneficial to him. But for everything we've just said, you kind of feel like you need to keep him around. But it's, it just feels rubbish if you're blocking his pathway. And, for instance, they brought in Matisse Tell. Matisse Tell really is someone that's blocking Mikey Moore's pathway, let's be honest. But it's whether, I suppose, they decide Mikey Moore, whether he is ready for prolonged exposure yet. I mean, he made 19 appearances last season. I think Postecoglou even said we probably weren't planning to play him this much this season. It's because of the injuries. When you've got like West Brom, potentially could look at him, and Mason, who knows him inside out, and be able to kind of make good use of him. So, yeah, hopefully that contract will be tied up in the near future. You would imagine they'll try and get him to a long-term one as well. He has got everything in his locker to be a terrific player. He's just got to keep his head down, keep working hard. Had a rough middle of the year, didn't he, when he was ill? And I think that had a bit of a knock-on effect afterwards. I think he's still got to do a lot of kind of physically growing, which is natural. He's not even 18 yet. You watched that little interview with the like a press conference with the kids that he did with Dane Scarlett. It was good fun, wasn't it?
It was really good. He speaks so well as well for someone who's 17 as well. But no, I think they both enjoyed that as well. Different variety of questions, and I saw in the comments some suggesting it was better than a normal press conference. Where
I'd agree. I'd say they're better than us. No, he was good. You're right. He's very mature. You can see that with Dane. Dane's 21 now. You can see he's still quite a withdrawn, quiet character. Whereas Mikey, while he's apparently a little bit shy, maybe around the senior players, he's got that self-belief, doesn't he, that those kind of special players have, or potentially special players have. It's quite good. We don't know whether he ate the worm or not, though. That young boy was trying to get him to eat a worm.
Yeah, and potentially might be doing same hairstyle as him. Look like young Ray Parlour.
Did he say Sonny's always taking a mick out of his hair, that he hates his hair or something?
Yeah, he said it's terrible. I think that's what he said. But yeah, on the subject of Mikey Moore and Dane Scarlett, I think some might have seen Tottenham's documentary on the Europa League win, the journey all the way to Bilbao and beating Manchester United in the final. I think one of the key bits in there is the Elfsborg game at the end of January, which they won 3-0. Dane Scarlett, Demola Ajayi and Mikey Moore all getting the name on the score sheet. Brilliant day for the academy. I think after the Europa League final win, that for me was the moment of Tottenham's season.
Yeah,
I think that's just the moment everyone in the academy dreams of. I mean, not even just senior players go on the pitch, but all three of them scoring in a late win as well. All brilliant goals. And I mean, they all came across so well in the interview, just saying how much it meant to them. I think Demola said he was playing in, was it an under-18s game against Norwich a few days before? He was brought off after 20 minutes, wondering why he came off. And it was basically because they wanted him to be part of the first team squad. So that was good. And Dane basically saying he's been with the club since he was 6 years old, and all he's done is dreamt of scoring for Tottenham in front of the fans. And he finally got that moment, because it's about 4 or 5 years ago since we saw him in friendly action for the first time, managed to get into the squad, but it's just never quite happened for him. But it did against Elfsborg, and yeah, it was just a fantastic night for all.
Yeah, it was an interesting documentary. It's one of those where club ones are always going to be that little bit more sanitized. Of course they are. They're not going to be warts and all. We know that. I mean, sometimes even something like Amazon's All or Nothing thing, which it had bits and pieces behind the scenes, but it was still, we know Spurs would have had a kind of a final cut over that. So yeah, it was a documentary that I think it was elevated by, like you say, the two big moments of the season really in Europe, which were the young players kind of lighting it up against Elfsborg and that night in Bilbao. And I liked that those two parts for me were the ones that kind of lifted it away from being just here's some highlights of the games and interviews that you kind of similar to what we heard after the matches. Those two kind of took it out of that. You and I cover the academy, we cover the under-21s and under-18s and try and keep an eye on what's going on. So that was a special night to kind of see all of that, and then to hear their stories afterwards. And it's going to be fascinating to see all of them now this season. You know, like we said about Mikey Moore, this is going to be the next step for him. You know, Damola Ajayi's headed off to Doncaster Rovers as well. Huge first senior experience for him. Dane Scarlett kind of feels like a bit of a make or break season for him. And I know that's a big thing to say, but we've had so many people say such big things about him, former Spurs managers. It feels like this is the year, whether it's at Tottenham or whether it's away on loan. It kind of feels like the one where he's got to ignite, as it were, and show what he can do, because there's a lot of talent there. From what I understand, I mean, Spurs are not kind of accepting loan offers at the moment for Will Lancashire. I think Thomas Frank wants to look at him, because I forgot that Brentford had a bid accepted for him before. Brentford had a bid accepted for him when he was at Sheffield United, Will Lancashire, before he came to Spurs. So he's a player that Thomas Frank wants to have a look at, and you'd imagine one of him and Dane Scarlett will stay next season as a homegrown player. So there's an opportunity to be had. But yeah, back to the documentary. That was great for me. Everything around that night, which I just loved writing about that one. It was such fun. And then, of course, Bilbao, and probably the highlight, which we kind of got to see in the trailer, was the Postecoglou speech, which was very cool. It was just mad looking back on it all, wasn't it? And the parade, and just what a huge, huge end to the season it was. And I still get goosebumps when that final whistle goes. In any video I watch, it's so weird. I think it's just because it's just not a feeling that I'm used to, that a final whistle of a final actually meaning something positive. I could be watching a video on TikTok, Instagram, whatever, or that documentary. When that whistle sounds, I even find myself watching still. They have videos of like supporters groups around the world in their pubs and bars, and the moment when the final whistle goes there, it's just something incredible. And it was interesting. Someone was saying about Postecoglou, and I can see where they're coming from, that he's almost now like enshrined in this kind of like amber, like a Jurassic Park kind of mosquito or something, that he's always going to be as he was. He's always going to be the man that won the trophy. We never got to see what came next, good or bad. You know, it could have been fantastic, or it could have spoilt the legacy slightly, where it was kind of, he's almost left in this point now where he'll be remembered for delivering that, which is, yeah. So that documentary was interesting to see it from that perspective. Absolutely.
So Tottenham's first game since the Europa League final win will be away at Reading, Saturday, July the 19th at the Select Car Lease Stadium. Thomas Frank's first game as Tottenham manager. I think that's going to be one all fans are looking forward to, just really to see who plays. Luka Vuskovic could play, Jamie Donnelly, Alfie Devine, players like that. Just how exactly Spurs set up that day in Berkshire. In terms of the game, that's probably when we're going to see the brand new away kit one for the first time as Reading play in blue and white. What do you make of the black kit then? Looks seems to be very popular, put it that way, amongst the fan base.
I like it. I really do. I wouldn't say there's been many over the years that I've really, really liked. They did a retro light blue one about 3-4 years ago, maybe, that I really liked. Not a huge fan of the home one this year. It's a bit like, it's one of those that might look better when it's kind of in action on the players. But this away one, it's very smart. And I have been considering getting it to play five-a-side in midweek, but
the problem,
full kit, no, honestly, oh my goodness! Every time I wear anything like a Spurs training top or anything to my five-a-side, the guys there always immediately look at the shorts. They're always like scanning just so they can get full. They're ready to say that phrase at me, but I never have thus far. I never intend to. But the other problem you've got, if you were to get, you'd have to buy the breathable proper shirt if you're going to wear it in five-a-side, I think. Otherwise, you would melt. It's 125 quid. It's like insane prices. So I don't know whether I'm just going to get a bank loan out and get that, or whether I just maybe wait until it's reduced at some point. I don't know. It's crazy. I know we sound like an old man when I say stuff like that, but I just cannot believe how much football shirts cost nowadays. I know it's in line with like NFL shirts and things like that, but when you're changing them every year, It's not even every 2 years anymore, is it? It's every year, and there's 3 of them. It's just crazy. I sound so old and moany.
Yeah, I think we've said it before that they are an awful lot of money now. I think it's about £80 for the normal fan version. Yeah, I think it's all right. The new shirt, smart. It's a lot better than the home one, but having looked at the reports of what the third kit's going to be with the retro badge, I think that's going to be just as popular if the leaked images are believed to be true. Finally, then, before we call it a day, England under 21s won the Euros at the weekend with a 3-2 win over Germany. Archie didn't play in the final, but not a bad season for him, really. Europa League final winner, and now a winner with England at international level.
Yeah, this is it. The winning mentality. Yes, he ended up kind of having to watch on probably a little bit more than he would have wanted across the tournament. Started off obviously earlier in the tournament getting some minutes, and kind of came on here and there after that. Yeah, it's these young players having this knowledge, I suppose, of what it takes to get through big matches now. And coming on and my brain's gone. He came on in Bilbao, didn't he, at the end?
Yeah, literally for the last couple of minutes.
Yeah, but he knows what it takes to see out a huge match like that and huge pressure and all of that. So, yeah, it's this is all about their education, it's about their learning and being winners. And yeah, I was reading a little bit the other day because obviously about Boast coming in from Leeds Academy and how the player that's kind of blocking his path here is Harry Gray, isn't it? Archie's brother, who even Archie himself says is going to be an even better player than he is. I don't think anyone's going to pry him away from there at the moment. But it's just such a ridiculously talented family, the Gray family. I mean, the DNA in them is incredible. I want a big season from him. I know this sounds ridiculous when he's like 18 kind of years old, but I really hope Thomas Frank kind of harnesses what he can become, and we see him in his like proper position. And he's a player he wanted at Brentford. That was the big thing, wasn't it? They were about to sign him. I'd love to see him, given a shot in the midfield. And like I say, with the amount of games, and I know there's a paradox of me saying, they've got to sort out what they're doing at number 6, and you've got someone like Archie Gray that can play as a number 6. But I think everyone is going to get game time that is going to be part of this squad. I said it before and I'll say it again. I don't think people realise how good Archie Gray is going to be. You speak to a lot of these young players, and when they speak about the best player they've played with in England setup, a lot of them say him. I think Liam Delap was one of those, didn't he? I think he said Archie Gray was the best player he'd played with. But yeah. Big season ahead. Big season ahead for lots of people. Big season ahead for Tottenham, let's be honest. They've got to back Thomas Frank in keeping Cristian Romero. They've got to back him in the transfer market. They've got to back essentially this decision they've made and show everyone why in their mind it was the right one to make. And hopefully that's with transfers starting to kick into gear in the next week or two, and decisions made on players heading out the door. I think the worst thing for Spurs would be what does seem to happen to them is struggling to get players out the door, and that holds up everything. We've been here before, haven't we? Waiting to see on deadline day which players get a kind of a loan move eventually because they couldn't get a permanent signing out of the club. And I worry about a couple of players that might be the case again.
Yeah, fingers crossed on the next episode of the podcast we will have a new signing to talk about, but let's wait and see on that front. So that's it for today's latest episode of Gold Guest Talk Tottenham. We'll be back soon for more Tottenham news. In the meantime, just keep with us at football.london for all your latest Tottenham news. You can either download Sail It in your app store and use our code GOLDGUEST at the checkout to get an exclusive 15% off your first purchase. Or online, you can go straight to saily.com/goldguest. For more information, please go to our episode description box.